Arts has been important to me for as long as I can remember. I immigrated from the Netherlands when I was a little over a year old with my mom and my dad. My dad was a musician and my mom was a crafty artist. My dad brought over as many instruments as he could, but was still 1,500 pounds over the weight limit, but he just couldn't part with some of those instruments. We lived with my uncle and aunt and cousin in Burnaby for about a year. And then we moved to our own house in Surrey in 1964. In 1965, my brother was born, and we had a cozy little family living in North Surrey. My first remembrance of my dad building something in our yard for the house was this beautiful white picket fence. And with the leftover bits, my dad built me an easel for which I could put on my canvases and do any painting that I wanted. My mom bought me all canvases I wanted and paint and encouraged me and even painted beside me. My dad also constructed a little puppet theater for me out of a wooden orange crate. The curtain in the front was made of a purple velvet cleaning cloth for a saxophone. And to keep the curtain down when the show wasn't on, there was a broken drumstick to hold it down with the weight. My parents were always encouraging me to be creative. There was music in the house, there was singing in the house, there were arts in the house. My first performance I remember being in grade 1 at our elementary school. There was an evening of a talent show, and I was 6 years old sitting on a stage all by myself in front of this huge audience playing my zither, which is a stringed instrument that my Oma, my mom's mom, had bought from Italy and sent to me. My dad had made an arrangement of a song called Scarlet Ribbon, and I played it, and I don't recall being nervous or anything like that. I did my piece and got off the stage, but yep, 6 years old was my first performance. Later on in my school years, elementary school years, we had a great teacher in grade 5 who loved singing and brought us lots of songs, musicals to learn, Canadiana. She was really good at that. And you could tell that she loved music, so it rubbed off on us. In fact, she had us learn the entire lyrics for Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which I can still sing word for word today. We also, in grade 5, had an art teacher, a visual arts teacher, and he was an artist himself and had this whole supply cupboard of lots of different supplies that we could use, and he encouraged us and probably did a little more art than he was supposed to as our teacher, but nobody really minded. There was once a month on Fridays in the afternoon, the whole school could do different projects like how to do obedience training for your dog or how to fix your bike. And there were also art classes. So the first time that I ever worked a pottery wheel was at 10, and it was a kick wheel because they weren't electric then. But we certainly loved our pottery classes. And I still have a pendant that I made in that year, and it survived till this day. My dad got involved as a music director for a local community band that ran for over 50 years in Surrey. He did 31 years himself, volunteer, and it became sort of the life of our family was sort of built around these rehearsals and the performances and the trips that we made with this band. I myself got to travel to Europe twice, both month-long trips. We went to England and Scotland and Germany, and so that was a great opportunity for all the kids involved. My brother and I both played instruments in the band. We had a marching band and a concert band, and my dad started a dance band. So the dance band played music from the big band days, like Tommy Dorsey and Glenn Miller. Those were his, favorite musicians. So this dance band would play at different sort of nightly events. And also, we had a Remembrance Day service. At that point in time, the Wally Legion sponsored us. So we were to play hymns while the wreaths were being laid at Remembrance Day services. After the wreath laying, we would go inside and the dance band would play for the veterans and they could dance along with the music that they remember from the war years. When I went to high school, my brother and I, because my dad was also a music teacher, my brother and I were kind of bored with the level of playing in the high school bands. So we ended up playing lots of instruments each. My brother played brass instruments. I played most of the woodwind instruments. At one point, I was even playing tuba parts on baritone sax because we didn't have a tuba in the high school band. Also in high school was my first exposure to a musical where we were singing and performing. So that was probably my first foray into singing in front of an audience. And I was hooked, but that will come later on. After I graduated from high school, I went into just playing here and there with local bands during the summer for summer things like Burnaby Heritage Village or seniors buildings. And I didn't really have one place that I could perform. The symphony, the Surrey Symphony, for which I was a guest artist at one point, the director, Lucille Lewis, said there was a operetta going on by the Fraser Valley Gilbert and Sullivan Society, and they needed a flute player. So I decided I'd go and ask them if they needed me, and they did. And as I'm playing in the orchestra pit at the Surrey Arts Centre, I was looking up on stage and thinking, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. So I took dancing, singing, and acting lessons, and then became a performer in musicals. And that has stuck with me to this day. Also, while I was performing musicals, I was helping my dad repair instruments, his musical instruments, during the summer. And that was really informative on the way an instrument works and how other instruments play. And I was able to overhaul a flute and a clarinet and maybe an alto saxophone completely by myself. But it wasn't something I could do all the time like he did. So going back to theater experience, I found that my musical background plus my visual arts background sort of all converged in theater, because there is set painting to do, so you can use your visual arts there. There's costume making, there's prop making, and there's makeup. So the visual arts and the performing arts really come together well in theater. So eventually, when I was doing theater, it was mostly at the Surrey Arts Centre. Now, going back to the community band that my dad was directing, we had actually recorded an album on the stage in the Surrey Arts Centre back in 1976 with only 8 microphones, so that was high tech at the time. And that record actually still survives today on a CD. But at the Surrey Arts Centre, I was asked if I could apply to be a job as an usher. They had already seen my integrity as a volunteer with our theater group that was there regularly. So I was hired and spent 3 years as an usher. So ushering it's a professional job with the City of Surrey. However, you do get to see a lot of performances and a lot of community theater and music that's going on. So it's great exposure in that respect. I ended up being there for 3 years in the usher position. Then I went to contracting for rental space for people who wanted to rent the theater because I was familiar with the theater. And then after about 8 years in at the Surrey Arts Centre, I also became one of the art instructors for children 6 to 11 years of age, which I still do to this day. Plus, I also teach at the new community centre in Clayton, which is a wonderful building. So going on from there, when I got married, I realized that I needed to have somebody that was in the arts as well. My mother said, never marry a musician, but I did because I needed to have that conversation with music around me all the time. Also, my children, I was pregnant on stage with all of them, so they almost didn't really have a chance except to be part of musical theater. So they were incorporated in dance classes and also had their time on stage and backstage. So At one point, our whole family was involved in shows, and so we were spending time together and doing something we all love to do, and still being a family on stage and backstage. So after that, my career in art instruction and also in theater has kept going. I'm still doing shows to this day. About a year ago, I was in a musical, Spamalot, for 20 performances. And I still teach, as I say, in the Clayton Community Centre and the Surrey Art Gallery, children's courses mostly. And recently, I have started teaching at a seniors residence in Surrey as well. So working with art with seniors, and that's been very rewarding, seeing what art can do for people, making sure that they're still being creative and they're happy in their creativity. Plus, I do sing-alongs with them too, which is one of my favorite things to do. And it's wonderful to see people singing and reminiscing with the songs that we sing. So my arts journey has been continuous from as long as I can remember. It's been fruitful, and the journey is still going on.